This is the painting of Victoria Bridger's Herron. So this is Samuel Herron's wife. This is Mrs. Herron's great-great-grandmother. She is the great-great-granddaughter of Samuel Herron, which makes her the great-niece of David Herron. But this is the painting of her great-great-grandmother here in her home. It's just beautiful.
What he said was they took him off the battlefield to the nearest train station. And I asked, what's his name? I can't think of it right now.
Yeah.
I'm Jackson, the expert on it. How many miles is it from there to the train station?
Yes.
And I've forgotten whether he said 12 miles. It was something the wagon wasn't going to make that an hour, you know. Mm-hmm. So that told me something. But the other, with one branch of the family, they said they took his body off. I thought they put him on the train dead. They took his body off, and his wife. People, that train line went through Coffeeville.
Sure.
And in every town, they were stopping to ask people, how many can you take? You know, I heard it shallow. Oh. They were hauling those who had been wounded. But anyway, the train pulled in and they took his body off. She didn't know he was dead.
Oh.
I don't think I've told you that part of it. Well,
how sad.
Anyway, I thought, well, and then it dawned on me. I've always wondered how he got that body home in a wagon that far from Tennessee in April.
So he took the train.
And it didn't make sense. He'd burn fires at night to keep predators away from that from elderly person in Coffeeville. So I thought, you know, it's a combination. I bet you they took him off that battlefield.
Sure.
And they took him, you know, and they did take him in a wagon.
Yeah, he probably died.
If that's what happened. So anyway, do you need any of this?
No, ma'am, I'm good. I already had some.
What is that?
I did the chicken salad. Chicken salad. It's very good.
Okay. So anyway, so I thought, well, you know, at least then I talked to this man. What's the name of his name? I should have introduced you to him. I don't think I had been in touch with him in a long time. Anyway, you could still get in touch with. He's written 1 or 2 books, and he's written a book on Charlotte. Well, I don't think I. And he said, Joy, I don't know him well, but I know him well enough that he knows my name. And he said, it's very doubtful that they took him off that field if he was dead.
That makes sense.
And he said because
that's just so been alive.
He said now he was an officer. He was a lieutenant colonel, and they made some exceptions, but for the most part, they couldn't do anything about the dead, but they were trying to get the wounded off of that field. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And he said, in addition to that, I don't think they would have put a dead man on the train unless Spencer faked it and told him he was.
Or he died on the train.
Spencer is saying, this man wasn't using the same name. He had gone up north fine.
What name did he use? It wasn't Spencer. What name did he use?
If I could find it, I'd let you have a copy of that. I can't read it to myself.
Okay.
I don't know what I did with it. I wish I'd gotten it out.
Do you remember? You don't remember what name he was using?
Well, no, I don't remember. He's another name completely. The picture I gave you is Spencer as an older man.
Yes.
Okay. You know what? I'm really thinking David Herron really was good to his slaves, because Spencer, at this age that he had to have been in that picture, he came back on a visit. He must have. He must have. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting.
And then he said, I think, but you see, so now, if Spencer, whatever his name was, is right, he didn't die until the next day.
Yes, on the train.
And I'm assuming that what he is telling is he died on the train.
Yes.
Because he says he didn't think they would have put the dead body on the train because they were trying so hard to take care of and they didn't have enough hospitals, nurses. He said they stopped in every town coming south. Holly Springs,
trying to find someone.
Oxford, coming on down. And they would always, even little bitty places and say, how many can you take?
Yes.
And he said, that's how it got out so far. So many times this was used as a hospital. He said, they took care of them, but they didn't want what you would call a hospital. He said, but that, and it is, my house was used as a hospital.
Yeah.
He said, they probably took 2 or 3 of those people off.
I'm sure.
But they didn't have the medical facilities.
No, it wasn't like a...
Anyway, I bored you with all that.
No, that was interesting. I need to find out, because I tried to look up Spencer. I tried to find more information on Spencer, and if he used a different name, that would be helpful to know if he was going by a different name.
He was.
So...
I'd never heard of it. It told who he married, where he went.
Wow.
Evidently, he had told this.
Yeah.
And he was old enough, you could tell in that picture.
Yes.
He said, right, after he came back, they sent him to a place that David Herron owned. Did you get any fruit or anything?
I did. I grabbed grapes.
Oh, but there's some cantaloupe and stuff.
Yeah, but I want the green grapes. I love grapes.
Anyway, he talks about what happened to him and what he did.
Okay.
But what I'm saying, if he's right, if he's right, then the date on that tombstone's wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that happens more than once.
The family Bible has the same date that's on that tombstone.
Oh, no.
And he said, Joy, how do you know whether they put that in the Bible right away or whether they got around to it later?
Yeah, exactly.
So I got to compare the handwriting in the Bible and see if I can figure out whose handwriting is whose.
That's true.
It went over in a number of years.
So, Miss Herron, when I first came here to see you, and I turned it on, it's recording, what did you think when I first came here and I was asking you about that 1851 incident that I was investigating in Memphis, and that the enslaved man had run away from your great-great-uncle, and I wanted to see your records to see if I could find his name?
Well, obviously I was interested at first because I'm always interested in that sort of thing. I didn't know what to expect, but I was glad to see you.
Aw.
And after I met you, I was still gladder to see you, so you were very welcome. It didn't take time for us to sort of realize that we had something in common and enjoy each other. So I was a wreck when she moved. I did not approve of that because I'd gotten to know her and to trust her. And she was good about sharing information. As far as the information about David Herron, I did not know, had not heard that story that she told me, but I was not terribly surprised that I had a feeling for some time that he was probably good to his slaves, and I was delighted to hear that. That slavery was just a matter of fact. I'm not going to argue slavery at this point. But it seemed to me, because of another story that I had shared with her, and plus this one, it showed that he did, well, he was good to his slaves. So I think, and then Jennifer moved, which she should not have done. I was not through with her. But anyway, and she's back today, and I'm delighted.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, what did David Herron, so you're related to Samuel Herron. You're related to David Herron's brother. So what did Samuel Herron do after the war? Where did he come back to Coffeeville? Did he live in Coffeeville?
He lived in Coffeeville. David Herron was a lawyer in Coffeeville, but I think you know that.
And what was Samuel?
He had an older brother, George Herron, who was the oldest of the 3 boys that lived in Yellowbush County, but I think he lived over in Oakland. I need to know a little more about him, but he died. I think I do have the date, I just don't remember. Right near the beginning of the Civil War.
Okay.
The war between the states. Is it okay to call it that?
You call it whatever you want, ma'am.
But he was the oldest, and he had a son. But he had 2 sons, and one had died, and one that moved to Coffeeville, who was very close to my side of the family. Then you had David Herron, who was a lawyer. George was a lawyer, and David was a lawyer.
Okay.
And then Samuel was a merchant.
Okay.
And Samuel went to war. He was a captain. I can't tell you right now what group he was with.
Sure.
I don't remember. I've got it. But I knew that after family tradition said he was never really well after the war. And he was not an old man when he died. In fact, he had a child that was born after he died.
Oh, okay.
So he was not 20 years old, but he was not an old man.
Sure.
So I found out it's one thing, you never stop trying. Never stop trying. Because I ran across something one day that even told me more about him. I was in a paper. That's how I found out he was a lawyer.
Oh.
But what I did, I found out why he was never well after the war. In an old letter written by a soldier in the war, he was writing home, and he said that Sam Herron had been wounded. And if I go back, I'll try to find the name of that battle. And that he said he had no money on him. I guess he had spent it on the soldiers.
Sure.
And he said, I had a little money, and I gave him some of my money so he could get home.
Oh.
So that's about the extent. So Sam is buried there too, but he was in the service. But I doubt that if he was hurt, I doubt that he went back.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so you think...
Now, we can find the date he died, but he...
It'd be on his tombstone. Oh, sneezed in Coffeeville. My allergies are acting up since I got here.
Yeah.
Boy, woo, summer in the South.
Yeah.
Now, Miss Herron, how long have you lived here? Like, you weren't born here.
No, I was a year and a half, and I'm 90. It's 1933. 1933 we moved here. And I have lived off a few places where I had another job, but I never moved everything out of this house. My parents were here. This was always my address.
And you were only child?
No.
No?
Had an older sister.
Okay.
She was 7 years older. She's dead now. And my brother was 5 years younger. Okay. He's not living now.
Oh, I see.
So I'm the only one that's left, and I have a nephew.
You have a nephew, yes.
So they're just the two of us that left.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And when I go to Coffeeville, your tombstone is already in the Coffeeville Cemetery.
That's right, because I don't want anybody else to... That's right. I don't want anybody else to decide what to put on that stone.
That makes sense.
That's right. My brother's was already there when he died.
Really?
Too. Yeah. But you know, that's a big lot, if you remember.
Oh, yes, it is a big.
David Herron's buried there, Sam Herron's buried there, some of my Bridgers line are buried there. Then I think the earliest, and I plot, and everybody says it's almost like an individual cemetery. I think the earliest grave is sometime in the 1830s.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So then, where were you born at?
Well, I was born, my parents were living in Coffeeville, but I was born in Oxford. That's the nearest hospital.
Oh, the hospital. Okay. And that's where you went to school, too, right? Didn't you go to Mississippi State?
No.
I mean, Ole Miss? You went to Ole Miss, right? Yes. Sorry, I got it wrong.
Don't ever make that mistake.
And so then, from Coffeeville, you moved here. And your dad was a store owner, right?
No.
Oh, I thought, okay.
No, it was his grandfather that was a store owner. Grandfather. That was a merchant. My dad farmed. He came, and I'm not going to bore you with all of that story, it'd take forever, but he farmed and loved it, but they owned this property. Early on, not a lot of people lived in this delta. It wasn't considered healthy. A lot of mosquitoes, a lot of everything.
Yeah.
So Coffeeville was in the hills, but they owned this property and they had rented it out. And then, as you know, the Depression came.
Yes.
The depths of the Depression still. And people were having a struggle, and my family was too.
Yes.
They did have a good bit of land, I think, from what I'm hearing and what I'm finding. And so they sold some of that land to keep going. They didn't sell all of it. They didn't sell this. Anyway, he decided in 1933, my grandfather died in 1933, but Daddy had pretty much taken over the farming of that kind of thing. And so he decided to come to the Delta to farm this land they'd been renting out to see if he could make, I guess, to see if he could make more than he made renting it out.
Yes, okay, make a living.
And he was going to stay a year or two, and
Ended up
he
staying.
never went back. But he went. He didn't go back to live. He
Yeah.
went back at least once a week because he still had land out there and he had cattle in Yalobusha County.
Okay.
So that's the reason I feel very much a part of Yalobusha County.
Because you were connected to it every week.
Yeah, and so and then my grandmother was still living, and other relatives, and it was like home.
Yes.
So.
And you grew up here. Where did you go to school here? Like, what's your elementary school? What's your high school?
In those days, every little town had an elementary school, and this little town didn't have but 2 streets, so still had an elementary school. People living around would go. They had, but remember, this is years ago.
Yes.
They had a 2-room school, 4 grades in each room. Can you imagine?
No.
But then my sister was 7 years older, and then when she and her best friend were a part of in the 8th grade, then the question was where they were going to school.
After that.
After that, well, Webb had a high school, and so did Sumner. Webb and Sumner about 2 miles apart.
Okay.
But we were in the Webb school district, but for some reason our parents decided Sumner had a better school, so they had to drive us. Well, I was going into the 3rd grade, so they just threw me in the car and sent me to Sumner too.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, and I loved it, had wonderful friends in Sumner.
Yeah.
And I went there through the 9th grade. Then they started, a group got together and bought a station wagon and sent the Glendora high school students to Greenwood.
Okay.
So I graduated from Greenwood High School.
Greenwood High School. And then you went to Old Miss.
Then I went to Ole Miss.
What year did you graduate from Old Miss?
When did I graduate?
Yeah.
53. I went to Ole Miss in the fall of 1949. That's a long
Nice.
time ago. But I was supposed to go to Ward Belmont.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Ward Belmont? In Memphis, it was not Memphis, in Nashville. It was a very well-known girls' school way back in the dark ages. It had been what it had been called before that, Academy, and then it became Ward Belmont. But it was people came from all over the country going to Ward Belmont.
Yeah.
But anyway, as it got closer, I decided I really wanted to go to Ole Miss, and they had already paid the first thing you have to pay. So I cried, and Daddy cried, and Mother just threw up her hands and gave up.
So how many girls went to Old Miss at the time, though? There couldn't have been a lot of girls at school there. Was there a lot?
Pretty, well, not as many as boys, but by that time there were a lot of girls.
There was?
in Ole Miss.
Okay, that's good.
And, oh yeah, a good many by that time.
What did you get your degree in? Was it teaching or education?
I got an education because there's a one-stop course on every campus. And I loved Ole Miss. And I had a lot of friends that I shouldn't have. Well, nobody ever asked me if I wanted to go to college.
It was just...
The only question was where.
I gotcha.
So by the time I went, I was really not serious about that. It was just everybody else goes and I'm going too.
I gotcha.
And so the first semester, I had a friend who was a little older than I was, and she was in home ec, and she said, "Why don't you?" It didn't take me but one semester to know that I wasn't any good for home ec, any at all.
Me too.
And so I switched to education because, and I didn't set the world on fire either, but I had enough sense to know I better pass. Better pass.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what I found out early on, there was the beginning course, I said, but the 7 cardinal principles of education. And for some reason, I decided to really do something well. So I was just over there. So I memorized the 7 cardinals. When they asked questions, and a lot of questions would lead right back into that. It was the smartest thing I ever did, and then I don't think I ever opened the book after that. Because it was usually discussion questions, and I could wing it. But, so I'm not proud of my, I didn't have the...
You still got it.
I knew that I better do enough to graduate. So I did that, but I have to tell you, I ought not be telling the whole world this.
Well, I'll edit anything out. Don't worry.
Okay.
Now, when you graduated then, did you go and teach, or did you come back here?
I went and taught. See, after I graduated, there were 3 of us that decided, Oh, I shouldn't tell you all this. I should not tell you all this. Wouldn't it be fun to go to New Orleans?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, there was an opening in grammar school. I could teach it, but I never was thrilled about it. It wasn't my thing.
Sure.
Really, I should have been in an upper grade. And I could have taught English because I liked English
Yes.
grammar, believe it or not. But anyway, so the other was something else. And so there we went and got an apartment
Yes.
on St. Charles in New Orleans. And then one of them came home and married, and the other one married a little later. And anyway, I even lived in the French Quarter one year.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I loved it.
I love New Orleans.
And but I stayed for several years. I would come home pretty often.
Sure.
And then I came home. My father was not doing well. He wanted me to come home. And I said, do I have to come home? No, you don't have to get a job. Just come home.
Now,
Didn't
when
do
wa-
anything for several years.
When was that? Like in the late 50s? You graduated in 52?
Yeah, I came home about 1960. I graduated in 53.
53.
And then I didn't do anything. And then an opening came with the department, with the welfare department over Charleston. And somebody was, and I hadn't even thought about it, said, why don't you apply for that? I'm going to do that, you know.
Sure.
Something to do. So I did. And I got the job. And I worked there for several years. And then I got a promotion that took me to Jackson, to the state office.
Gotcha.
And I guess I must have behaved myself a little better because I eventually became state director for the food stamp program.
Ah.
And
For the what program? You became state director for what program?
food stamp program.
Oh, food stamp program.
State director for the food stamp program. And that what you did was we were writing the policy for Mississippi based on the federal regulations
Okay.
and interpreting federal
Yes.
regulations. And I enjoyed that, but it was fun. It was a challenge, I
Yeah.
think. And then I finally came back. Anyway, I finally came back home.
Yes.
And
You just stayed.
I've been here a long time. I've tried to leave some of it out, but
Well, and I remember one time I was here, I had asked you, because I see the marker when I drive in, I had asked you about Emmett Till and what you remembered about that. Do you remember anything about that?
I remember when it happened. I don't remember the details so much. I've forgotten after a long. Tallahatchie River.
Yes, just
I've forgotten which spot it was on the Tallahatchie River. I remember some of that. I remember the country was very divided.
Yes, ma'am.
At that point, and that was a shame. I don't know whether you ought to quote me on this or not, but I'm going to tell you
Yes, ma'am.
exactly how I felt. I felt that was horrible, what they did. However, I did feel that it was during that period where some of the blacks and the whites weren't helping, was really trying themselves to see if they could get by with being rude. Some of the whites were probably doing the same thing. He went in and whistled, or so they said.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think he should have been punished, but I think they should have taken him to his granddaddy when he was staying, say, he needs to learn some manners.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
he needs spanking, you spank him.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I think should have
Yeah.
been done. And I think that's true whether you're white or black.
Yes, ma'am. Did you know the Bryants or J.W. Meelan? Like, did you know him? I mean, he owned the store here in town.
He did.
owned-
At the end of that, he owned a little store.
Yeah.
I did and I didn't.
Okay.
I knew him, he knew me, I knew to speak to him. We didn't really use that store, but it was such a small town, I knew him.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you much about him.
Did you not like
because
him?
I didn't see him, we didn't run in the same circles.
Yeah.
Yes, I can tell you I would, if I walked up to him, I would have known him.
Okay.
And he would have known me.
And did you know the Bryants? Did you know Roy Bryant or Carolyn Bryant to see
I
them?
only knew about them because they were involved in this mess.
But you didn't know them.
No. And I cannot really tell you that I knew, what's his name, I've already forgotten it. I didn't know much about him except he had a store. And he was pleasant when I saw
J.W.
him. Yeah,
Meelan.
J.W.
Meelan.
I didn't really know much about him.
Yeah. Did you know his wife? Did you see his wife around or anything?
I can't even picture who I probably did at that time.
Yeah. But you knew the Lowells, right? You were friends with Mrs. Lowell that owned the cotton gin, right?
Yeah.
In town, you knew them. Now, how did you know them?
Known them forever.
Now, did they grow up here too? Did you go to school with them?
Their father was a little older than my father, friends. They had a daughter that was a little younger than I am, but we were real good friends growing up. We were such close friends that I had a key to the house. And then Mr. Lowe died, and he had 2 gins at that time. He was farming, but he had 2 gins. And some people say that we got something from that gin.
Yes.
And then Billy Lowe was horrified when he heard it. He said, when he heard that whatever that piece was that they're supposed to have gotten.
The fan.
He remembered that the gins they used to, when pieces were worn out, they had a great big area, they'd toss them and put another one on.
Like a junkyard.
He went rushing down there to see if he thought there was one down there if it was missing.
Yeah.
And so that was really the only connection
you had.
Did
you go to Sumter at all for any of the court hearing, or did you just avoid all of it?
I didn't go to any of it.
Yeah.
I never have gone to court. Went to court one time to hear it because I never had heard Uncle Rufus was a lawyer in Jackson. And I this never had been. This was in Coffeeville when I was a teenager, maybe a little younger than a teenager. And the Bailey twins and I decided we'd go up there having court. And we go up and stood in the door, you know. The judge I put his hand on the judge. They were talking, got up, ambled down, and said, come on, and sat us down where we wouldn't get in trouble. The judge was Daddy's first cousin, and so he knew them. He was from Charleston.
Yeah.
And so I never will forget that. He just smiled and just sit right here.
That's funny.
Then we got bored and left.
Yeah.
He didn't want us milling around.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think if it may have been one other time I was in a courtroom.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, you didn't. And after the whole thing happened, after the whole Emmett Till incident happened, did everything just go back to normal around here?
I don't know. I don't know that I can answer that. I guess yes and no. People were very aware of it for a long, long time. Yeah. But it didn't. I don't know whether I should say this or not. After that, I don't know whether it was in the year, but it wasn't too long.
Yes, ma'am.
Over at that service station over there, some white man came in. There was a black man that worked there. Nice. Everybody liked him.
Yeah.
And the other man, I don't know whether he was drinking. That's the reason I don't want you to quote me too much on this.
Yes.
But I don't know whether the other man was drinking or whether he was just a mean white man, and he shot him. And it upset the whites.
Yeah.
That, anybody would do that to him. He was so nice working there.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways the feelings began to change, but not immediately. Things like that take a while.
Yes, ma'am.
It still was a separate world. It still is,
yes, ma'am.
to a degree.
Yes, ma'am.
But, and I think that there are a lot of blacks that are still very bitter. No matter how nice you try to be to them, what they don't realize is that it's different. In the white race, we have different groups that are different and different groups that band together. They now are able, what they want, a lot of them, too many of them, is they think that they were in slavery and we ought to support them the rest of their lives and send them money for them to do nothing.
Yes, ma'am.
And
you have a tear.
I know it. My eye is sore right here. I must have hit something. Anyway.
It might be allergies. It looks like you're a little swollen.
I don't really have allergies. The idea is kind of sore. And I had a bit that came close to me. I bet it hurt real bad.
A little swollen, I can see it.
But anyway, I don't know how to answer that question, but I think Morgan, Bobby is one. Bobby, I think, has that. I have jumped him once or twice. He said some things I didn't like. Yes. About 2 years ago, I called him in here, and I had my nephew in here, and I laid the law down because I've tried to be good to him. That's been so ingrained in all of them. There's a lot of bitterness there that they try not to show. Well, he went way too far. And I told him, you make up your mind, you're going to change it, you hit the road. And I know he thinks I couldn't get anybody else, but that's okay. I can afford to go to Greenwood and run a place. Oh, and we always say I wanted an audience. Mm-hmm. And he's tried every now and then, once or twice in the past year or two, I've stopped and said, you go start that, hit the big one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put up with that because I'm good to him.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't treat him badly. I used to, every time he'd take me to the grocery store because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
I would always let him get something too, put on my bill. I've quit that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll still give him stuff sometimes. I give him, if I don't want it to go bad in the refrigerator, I give it to him. And I trust him. He's a good worker.
Yeah.
He takes my credit card to go get things. It's just that it's so ingrained in him and was from the time he was a baby. I think that bitterness, he's trying not to show it, but it's still there. And I imagine it's true of all, at least of that age and older. I've thought about this a lot. I don't know.
When did you first meet Bobby?
Bobby was born on this place.
He was.
His father was born on this place. Wow. His father is 80-something years old.
Wow.
His father was born on this place. And Bobby has been in prison in Texas.
Yeah.
He's fooling around with a young girl. And he talks to me about it. I think that's one reason he stays here. He feels more secure. He doesn't have to explain himself as much because he doesn't deny it.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, I deserved it.
Yeah.
But he had to stay several years. But I think that's where we are now.
Yeah.
Where we have more trying to get an education. Bobby's intelligent. I think he would be in school if he, mm-hmm. I think he's too old for that now. He's not too old, but I think he thinks he is. I don't think you're ever too old to be educated. I'm not really answering your question.
No,
I'm rambling.
I'm listening. I wanted to just know some history.
I'm rambling, but it was so different. They couldn't use the same restrooms for years.
So were you ever in the same classroom? You never? Did you ever share a classroom with African Americans?
Classroom? No.
Yeah, no. So.
I was out of school by that time.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. And I don't know about most of the United States, but the Mississippi Delta has a lot more blacks.
Yes.
There's so much more farming. That's what they were doing. Yeah. But when they started going to the schools, then all your private schools, all these communities had private schools. I don't know whether it could have been foreseen or not, but it would not, even if they were ready to accept it, and I'm saying not everybody was, and I know that.
Yeah.
Even had they been ready to accept it, it was a bad practice because either they were going to flunk or they were going to pull all the white students back. They should have, some provision should have been made to try to bring them up to date. But the blacks wouldn't have had that. They wanted to sit in the classroom with whites, and they were miles apart in education.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And now you still don't have a lot of the older ones, and a lot of the young ones are not. What is the answer now?
I don't know. I mean, I think the answer is just you just have to treat everyone the same. So I think the answer, it's always equality. Everything starts the same. What you do with that equality is up to you. Mm-hmm. But I think as long as everyone's given the same opportunity.
Okay, now, there we go. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Then you can make your choice about where you want to go. Mm-hmm. But remember, when it all came about, when they finally integrated, all could have the same opportunities, they choose to go with whites where they didn't know what was going on. They needed a separate kind of education to try to bring them up.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. That there was a gap.
And I don't know. I don't know what the answer would. I think I know what the answer would have been, but it wouldn't have been accepted at that time. because it would have kept them separate. It would, just say they had tested 100 students.
Sure.
And say the ones that didn't do well, they say you'd have 60 blacks and 2 whites. You may have still had 1 or 2 whites in that group.
Sure.
But nobody wanted to accept anything like that at the time.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just the way I sort of feel about it now.
Yeah.
I think that, and I do, it irritates me, they walk the streets on dope and don't send their children to schools, get them an education. They, and how do you bring them out of that?
I don't know.
There are white people that do that, but
Yes,
the
ma'am.
blacks are in the majority in this area.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know. How much are you involved in the community here? Do you know the people here? Like, do you still know the people who live here and stuff? Or is it a different generation now? Do you know?
This community?
Yeah.
Most people my age are dead or have moved. That's true.
Yeah.
Most young people are not coming back to the Delta. They're getting, now I'm speaking more of white people.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, because that's what I'm familiar with. Some of the blacks are doing well for themselves. The majority are not.
See.
It's part of the lack of opportunity, and part of it is they don't care.
Yeah.